Genesis 1, of the most famous chapters in the Bible. But have you ever wondered, is it more than just a story? Could it be hiding inconsistencies, mysteries, and dilemmas that have puzzled scholars, theologians, and scientists for centuries? From the opening words, "In the beginning," Genesis 1 captivates with its poetic grandeur. It paints a picture of creation unfolding in a perfect sequence: light, sky, land, stars, life, and finally humanity. But here's the question. Does everything about this chapter add up? Think about it. How could there be light without the sun? Why does the narrative suggest a firmament, a solid dome over the earth? And why do the details of creation in Genesis 1 contradict the story in Genesis 2? Could it be that this sacred text, revered by millions, is not as seamless as it seems? Question. In this video, we'll take you on a thrilling journey to uncover what many avoid discussing. We'll dissect the scientific puzzles that clash with our modern understanding of the universe, the hidden cultural and historical context that shape this ancient account, the theological contradictions that challenge our ideas of God, humanity, and the cosmos. But this isn't just about critique, it's about curiosity. What if these questions aren't flaws but doorways to deeper understanding? Could Genesis 1 be more profound, more symbolic, and more layered than we've ever imagined? What if the real story of Genesis isn't just in what it says, but in what it hides? Get ready to question everything you thought you knew about the Bible's opening chapter. This isn't just a lesson in theology or history. It's a quest to see the text and yourself in an entirely new light. Let's dive in. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. These are some of the most profound words ever written, setting the stage for the majestic unfolding of creation. But have you ever wondered, does this story, as beautiful and poetic as it is, make sense scientifically? Let's pause for a moment. On day 1, God commands, "Let there be light," and there is light. Yet the sun, moon, and stars, the very sources of light we know, don't appear until day 4. How can there be light without the sun? What illuminated the earth for those first 3 days? And then there's day 3, when God brings forth plants. Lush greenery, trees bearing fruit, flowers blooming in abundance. But wait, how can plants survive without sunlight? Photosynthesis, the lifeblood of plant life, requires the energy of the sun. Yet the sun hasn't even been created. This isn't just a question of faith versus science. It's a puzzle woven into the very fabric of Genesis 1, begging us to look deeper. The creation account follows a deliberate, orderly sequence, but when examined closely, the logic seems to falter. Day 1. Light without a source. God declares, "Let there be light," and there is light. A moment of divine power, no doubt. But have you ever considered where this light comes from? Without the sun or stars, how do we have day and night? Some theologians suggest this light symbolizes God's glory, a divine illumination beyond physical understanding. But scientifically, the concept leaves us grasping. Without a celestial source, this light challenges the laws of physics as we understand them. Day 3, plants before the sun. 9 words per day, expanding it. The narrative continues with God creating vegetation, trees, grasses, and fruit-bearing plants. It's a scene of life bursting forth. But again, there's a problem. How can plants thrive without sunlight? Photosynthesis, the process by which plants convert sunlight into energy, is scientifically essential. Without the sun, life on Earth, as described in day 3, simply cannot exist. Could it be that the order of creation is not meant to be scientific, but symbolic? Or is this an invitation to question our understanding of divine timing? Genesis 1 implies a timeline of just a few thousand years, as interpreted through genealogies in the Bible. This young Earth view stands in stark contrast to modern scientific evidence, which places Earth's age at approximately 4.5 billion years. This discrepancy has sparked centuries of debate. Is Genesis meant to be a literal history, or is it a theological framework? While some Christians defend a young Earth, others interpret the days of creation as metaphorical ages, rather than 24-hour periods. Genesis 1:6-8 introduces the concept of the firmament, a solid dome separating the waters above from the waters below. To ancient readers, this description made perfect sense, aligning with their understanding of the cosmos. But modern science has dismantled this view. There is no evidence of a dome encasing the Earth, and our understanding of space reveals a vast, expanding universe. Yet the firmament's inclusion raises an intriguing question. Why did God allow this ancient worldview to shape His divine revelation? Perhaps the firmament is not meant to describe physical reality, but to symbolize God's mastery over chaos, dividing and organizing creation into harmony. On days 5 and 6, God creates animals, each according to their kind. This phrase suggests fixed categories of life, a notion at odds with the theory of evolution. Fossil records and genetic evidence reveal a dynamic process of change over millions of years. Yet Genesis portrays creation as instantaneous. Could this be a reflection of humanity's limited understanding at the time, or does it represent God's sovereignty in establishing life's diversity? Genesis 1 invites us into a story of creation, but it doesn't offer all the answers. Instead, it challenges us to wrestle with the text, to ask hard questions, and to seek God in the mystery. When you open the Bible to Genesis 1, it's tempting to see it as a direct account of creation, a moment-by-moment unfolding of God's divine power. But what if this sacred text carries layers of meaning, shaped by its historical and cultural roots? What if the real story behind Genesis 1 is just as fascinating as the story it tells? Did you know that Genesis 1 wasn't written by Moses, as many have traditionally believed? Most scholars agree that it was likely crafted by multiple authors, each with unique perspectives, during or shortly after the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BCE. Imagine the Israelites, displaced from their homeland, exiled to a foreign empire steeped in polytheistic beliefs. Their temple was destroyed, their identity shattered. How do you keep your faith alive in such a hostile world? For the Israelites, the answer was to reclaim their story. Genesis 1 wasn't just a narrative, it was a declaration. It boldly proclaimed, "Our God is not just a God among many. He is the creator of everything, the heavens, the earth, the stars, the seas, and even time itself." To understand Genesis 1, you have to step into the shoes of an ancient agrarian society. These people lived close to the land, dependent on the rhythms of the seasons, the sun, and the rain. Their understanding of the universe wasn't scientific, it was symbolic. Take the firmament, for example, the vault of the sky separating the waters above from the waters below. To us, it might sound strange, but for the ancient Israelites, it was a powerful image. It symbolized God's control over chaos. The waters above weren't just literal, they represented disorder, danger, and the unknown. By separating them, God was bringing order to the chaos. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Genesis 1 wasn't written in a vacuum. The Israelites were surrounded by cultures with their own creation stories, like the Babylonians' Enuma Elish. In the Enuma Elish, the god Marduk creates the world by slaying a primordial sea goddess, Tiamat, and splitting her body in two. One half becomes the sky, and the other half becomes the earth. Sound familiar? There are clear parallels to Genesis 1, dividing the waters, but there's a key difference. In the Babylonian story, creation comes through violence and conflict. In Genesis 1, creation comes through the peaceful, sovereign word of God. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. This isn't just a contrast, it's a theological statement. The God of Israel doesn't need to fight to create. He speaks, and it happens. At its heart, Genesis 1 isn't just about the mechanics of creation. It's about meaning. It's a theological declaration, not a scientific manual. Imagine the Israelites hearing this story for the first time. They weren't asking, "How old is the earth?" or "What's the molecular structure of light?" They were asking, "Who are we? Who is our God? And what is our place in His creation?" Genesis 1 answered those questions with breathtaking clarity. God is the creator of all things. Creation is good, ordered, and purposeful. Humanity is made in God's image, with a unique role to reflect His glory. Have you ever asked yourself why an all-powerful God would take 6 days to create the universe? Couldn't He just will it into existence in a single instant? Or is there something deeper, something hidden, that we're missing? Genesis 1 begins with a breathtaking vision of God bringing light into the darkness, order into chaos. It's a story we've heard countless times, yet when we pause to reflect on the details, questions emerge that challenge our understanding of God's nature and His plan. Let's delve into 3 profound mysteries in Genesis 1: God's omnipotence, the role of chaos, and humanity's place in creation. God's omniscience and omnipotence. Why 6 days? Why does a God who can do anything, choose to speak creation into being over 6 days? What's the purpose of the delay? Simon was wasting time when a new sound of muffled screams brought him from his meditation. As Christians, we believe in God's infinite power. He parted the Red Sea, raised the dead, and sent His only Son to redeem the world. Yet in Genesis 1, God doesn't instantly create everything. Instead, He speaks creation into existence step by step over 6 days. Why? Some theologians suggest this isn't about limitation but intentionality. God wasn't rushing to finish a task. He was demonstrating His sovereignty over time itself. Each day represents a divine rhythm, a balance between work and rest, a pattern He later gifts to humanity in the Sabbath. The 6 days teach us patience, order, and purpose. God is showing us that creation isn't just about power. It's about care, beauty, and precision. It's a message we often forget in today's fast-pacing world. If God created everything, then where did the chaos come from? And what does it mean that God brought order to it? Either way, Genesis 1 begins with a mysterious phrase: "The earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the deep." This description suggests that before God's creative work, there was a kind of chaos. But wait. If God is the creator of all things, did He also create this chaos? Or was it already there? This raises profound questions. The Bible often portrays God as bringing light, peace, and harmony, yet here His first act is to subdue disorder. Some scholars see this as symbolic. Chaos represents the brokenness of a world that needs divine intervention, a brokenness we still see today in sin, suffering, and strife. But here's the hope. God didn't just bring order once. He continues to work in our lives, transforming chaos into peace. Think of the storms in your own life. How often have you felt God's hand guiding you through them? Genesis says humans are made in the image of God, but does that make us the center of everything? What about the rest of creation? Genesis 1 describes humanity as the pinnacle of creation, made in the very image of God. But what does this mean? Does it mean we are above all other creatures with dominion over the earth? Or does it mean we have a responsibility to care for God's creation as stewards? Modern science challenges this view of human centrality. It reminds us that we are part of a vast interconnected web of life. But Genesis 1 doesn't have to conflict with this understanding. Instead, it calls us to reflect on our unique role. Being made in the image of God isn't about domination. It's about reflecting God's love, wisdom, and care to the world. Imagine a world where humanity truly embraced this calling, where we cared for the earth, each other, and all living things with the same compassion God shows us. The deeper we dive into Genesis 1, the more questions we uncover. But maybe that's the point. Maybe this chapter isn't about answers. It's about inspiring us to seek, to reflect, and to grow. Genesis 1 isn't just a story about the past. It's a call to action for the present. It reminds us of God's power, His patience, and His purpose. It challenges us to see the beauty in creation, to bring order to chaos, and to live as stewards of the gifts God has entrusted to us. So, what will you take away from this story? Will it be a new appreciation for God's creativity? A deeper commitment to care for His creation? Or a renewed faith in His ability to bring order to the chaos of your life? If you read Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 back to back, you might notice something unexpected. The two accounts of creation don't match. In Genesis 1, humans are created last, after the plants and animals. But in Genesis 2, Adam is formed first, followed by plants, animals, and finally Eve. Why would the Bible include two different creation stories right at the beginning? Could it be a mistake? Or is there a purpose behind this duality? Some theologians believe Genesis 1 emphasizes God's cosmic order, a grand, overarching view of creation. Meanwhile, Genesis 2 zooms in on the personal relationship between God and humanity, showing us a more intimate, earthy perspective. Genesis 1 leaves out so much. It gives us the what, but barely touches the how. How old is the universe? How exactly did God shape the stars, the planets, the life teeming in the seas? And then there's humanity. Genesis 1 simply says God created man in His image. But what does that mean? Does it refer to physical form, spiritual essence, or something else entirely? For centuries, people have debated these gaps, asking questions that Genesis doesn't seem interested in answering. And maybe that's the point. Perhaps God wasn't concerned with satisfying our curiosity about the mechanisms of creation, but instead wanted to emphasize the purpose of creation. One thing is clear. Genesis 1 is not a simple, straightforward account. Its repetitive patterns, apparent contradictions, and unanswered questions make it endlessly fascinating and sometimes frustrating. But maybe that's why it endures. Genesis 1 doesn't spoon-feed us everything we want to know. Instead, it challenges us to wrestle with God's Word, to seek Him in the mystery, and to recognize that our faith isn't built on easy answers, but on trust in the Creator. Have you ever found yourself asking, can faith and science ever truly agree? The first chapter of Genesis, so central to Christian belief, also sparks some of the deepest debates. For centuries, this text has inspired faith, yet it raises questions that challenge our understanding of God, creation, and the universe itself. But here's the real question. Does this tension between science and Genesis mean we're interpreting it all wrong? Or is there something deeper God is inviting us to discover? Let's dive into this delicate balance and uncover how Genesis 1 can speak powerfully to us today, even in the face of modern questions. 1. The clash between science and religion. Genesis 1 describes a world created in 6 days, a breathtaking masterpiece of divine power. But what happens when this account meets modern science? Consider this. Scientists tell us the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, evolving over eons. Meanwhile, a literal reading of Genesis suggests an Earth only a few thousand years old. How do we reconcile these two stories? For some, the answer lies in creationism, a belief that Genesis is a literal historical account. Others embrace evolution, seeing Genesis as symbolic of God's overarching hand in creation. And here's where the divide begins. This debate doesn't just pit science against faith, it divides believers. Some feel their faith demands literalism, while others see God's truth revealed in the beauty of science itself. 2. Symbolism or literal history. David Calloway. Genesis 1 presents a poetic structure, repeated phrases, orderly progression and symmetry. Could this be a clue that the text is less about scientific detail and more about conveying God's sovereignty? Imagine standing in an ancient world. People believed in many gods, each ruling over different parts of creation. Genesis 1 was radical. It proclaimed there was only one God who created everything with purpose and care. This is where the symbolism shines. The 6 days may not be a literal time frame, but rather a poetic framework. Each day declares God's authority over light, sky, land, and life. The message isn't scientific, it's theological. God is the ultimate creator, and nothing exists apart from him. 3. The challenge of interpretation. Here's the heart of the matter. How should we read Genesis 1? Some Christians view it as a divine poem, a declaration of God's power and love for his creation. Others see it as a precise account of history, unyielding in its details. But what if both perspectives are missing something? Brandon S. Radford, America, April 8th. Let's take an example. The firmament, described as a dome separating waters above and below. Ancient readers saw this as literal because their worldview didn't include modern cosmology. Today we understand the universe differently. Does this make Genesis wrong? Or does it show us the text was speaking to people in their language, revealing eternal truths in ways they could understand? This tension between science and Genesis isn't a problem, it's an opportunity. It invites us to ask, what is the Bible really trying to teach us? Genesis is theology, not science. The Bible isn't a textbook. Its purpose is to reveal God's character, not scientific formulas. It tells us who created the universe and why, not necessarily how. Faith in dialogue with discovery. Christians don't have to fear science. Every discovery, from the vastness of galaxies to the intricacy of DNA, can deepen our awe of the Creator. Humility in interpretation. Genesis reminds us that God's ways are higher than our ways. We may not have all the answers, but we can trust in His wisdom and love. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. These words are not just the opening lines of the Bible. They are a declaration of divine power, purpose, and love. Genesis 1 is not a science textbook. It is a masterpiece of divine storytelling. Through its poetic rhythm, it reminds us that creation is not chaotic, but ordered, intentional, and filled with meaning. Imagine the beauty of light piercing through the darkness for the very first time. Think of the Creator shaping land, sea, and sky with His command, each word bringing forth a new masterpiece. Isn't this a vision worth contemplating? And God saw that it was good. This phrase echoes like a refrain, a divine affirmation that the world and we are made with goodness at the core. What does it mean for us to live in harmony with this divine order? How can we mirror God's intention in the way we care for the earth and one another? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. Now, let's address something that might make you uneasy. What if Genesis 1 raises more questions than it answers? Questions like, how could light exist before the sun? Why does the timeline of creation differ from scientific understanding? These aren't signs of weakness in the text. Instead, they are invitations to wonder, to dig deeper, and to explore our faith in new ways. When you ask questions about your faith, are you doubting or are you growing? Jesus himself often taught through questions, inviting his disciples to think deeply. In the same way, Genesis 1 challenges us to move beyond surface-level readings and discover profound truths about God, creation, and our place within it. Some people see Genesis 1 as a battleground where faith and science clash. But what if it's actually a bridge? Many theologians argue that Genesis 1 was never meant to explain the mechanics of creation, but to reveal the meaning behind it. The focus isn't on the how or the why. Science tells us about the processes, the vastness of the cosmos, the intricacies of DNA. But Genesis 1 tells us about purpose. It reminds us that the universe is not an accident, but a work of divine art. The stars in the sky, not just burning gases, but signs of God's majesty. The earth beneath our feet, not just matter, but a gift entrusted to us. Genesis 1 is not just a story of beginnings, it's a story of hope. It tells us that we are not random accidents, but cherished creations, made in the image of a loving God. Despite its mysteries and controversies, Genesis 1 stands as a testament to the truth that God's hand is in everything, from the vastness of the universe to the smallest detail of our lives. As you ponder Genesis 1, remember this: faith is not about having all the answers, it's about trusting the one who does. So let's approach this sacred text with open hearts, curious minds, and a willingness to learn, not just about creation, but about the Creator Himself. In the beginning wasn't just about the creation of the world. It's about the beginning of our journey to understand God, ourselves, and our place in the universe. What stood out to you in this journey? Do you think Genesis 1 should be read literally or symbolically? What does it mean to you that humanity is made in the image of God? Comment below with your thoughts, questions, or insights. Let's start a conversation and dive even deeper into this incredible text. Genesis 1 is not a roadmap of how the world began. It's a mirror reflecting the divine purpose and beauty in all creation. Its questions challenge us to grow, to reflect, and to seek God in all things. Perhaps the true value of Genesis 1 is not in answering our questions, but in inspiring us to ask more. If this video sparked something in you, curiosity, wonder, or even more questions, don't stop here. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into Scripture, and share this video with someone who's ready to explore faith in a fresh, exciting way. Let's continue this journey together. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep your faith alive. See you in the next video.